This is Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal, and you are listening to the one and only Dave Dynasty Show.
The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us for another free episode brought to you virtually every week here from the Dave Dynasty Show. I kid. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you today. We have Vinny Berry on, author of Lance by Chance, the book about Lance Von Erich. It's a great book, a great interview. Ike is going to talk to Vince about that book. Look in the show notes. It'll tell you where you can get your copy. But before we dive into that, let's talk about some news, right? We know here on the Dave Dynasty Show, we're fans of real pro wrestling, right? We're particular about what we invest our time and our money into watching and supporting. One of those products that I've always loved is the NWA. Now, of course, there's big news. If you've been online, you've seen this. The NWA is coming back. There was quite a stir when all of a sudden, on YouTube, all the NWA's content disappeared. We didn't know if it was deleted, made private, whatever it may be. It just wasn't there. And, of course, everybody ran rampant saying, oh, they're gone, they're done, WWE bought them, they're out of business, blah, blah, blah. None of that was true. None was true. Details started to leak out about what was happening, and now it's official. We can tell you, because we've seen it with our own eyes, official reports. This is brought to you from Inside the Ropes. I will share the link to their article in the show notes as well. They're reporting on March 2nd, and this is in conjunction with Fight TV. On this, they showed that NWA is coming back with a pay-per-view called Back for the Attack on March 21st on Fight TV. Now, that is spectacular, right? There's no details. It just talks about some of the talent that we know will be there, right? Camille, Nick Aldis, Aaron Stevens, Trevor Murdoch, D'Angelo the Pope. We know these guys will all be there. But what's interesting about the Inside the Ropes article coming out, it says that after that, on Tuesdays at 6:05 via Fight TV, that NWA Power is coming back, right? Which we suspected because there was all these rumors that Dave Meltzer kind of leaked it out there that at the end of March they were going to do some TV tapings. Well, that's what this is. March 21st, the Back for the Attack pay-per-view, then 2 days of TV tapings, and then NWA Power is back. Now, this is going to be great. It's rumored that it's going to be a subscription service. It's going to be, they're saying $4.99 a month. That's nothing, man. That's nothing for the, hopefully this will be a great show. I'm a huge supporter of the NWA. I'll be very interested to see what the roster will look like because it's been depleted, right? Eli Drake's gone. James Storm's gone. Just countless guys are gone. Ricky Stark's gone. Zicky Dice gone. There's all these guys that are gone. They are saying Thunder Rosa will be there. I think she will still be appearing for them. But it'll be interesting to see what the new talent will be. Kerry Morton dropped a little thing about the NWA being alive and well. That's Ricky Morton's son. Will we see Kerry there? Will we see the Russians there, the Koloff Dynasty back who made an appearance? Will they be back in the NWA? And what new talent will be brought in? Guys, there's lots of talent out there, right? You can say what you want. There is an enormous amount of talent out there in professional wrestling that you don't even know of, that you've never even seen, and that usually people within their region see. There's plenty of talent. Hopefully that they're out there and they're going to pick up some of this talent, right? The former Simon Diamond apparently has a big role in talent relation type thing. So hopefully, he's combing the world and finding some good talent. It'll be interesting to see who they have on these tapings. I cannot wait. It is rumored that there will be no fans, right? We still have the issue going on that they're going to do it with no fans, but it's cool. I'm excited to see what happens. I would think they've got to throw at least a couple matches out there real soon, considering we're at the beginning of March and this thing's happening in just slightly over 2 weeks. I would think don't we at least have to have a main event announced for the pay-per-view? Who's Aldis going to defend against? I mean, I'm assuming there'll be a world title match. Who will that be against? What will it be? surely this has got to come out soon to help build for the pay-per-view. Another thing is, a lot of people are going to buy it just because they're so excited the NWA is back, right? But I think you got to have a good main event there to hook some more people, right? If you have a quality main event, Nick Aldis is a great champion. You give him a great challenger there for the title, and it's going to hook more people in. So it's very exciting. The NWA is back. We'll talk about it lots here on the Dave Dynasty Show in the coming weeks. And watch us on Twitter. You can follow me at the Dave Dynasty. And I will. I'll share a lot of stuff. I'll retweet a lot of stuff. And let's keep up. Let's see what's happening with the NWA and what the new announcements are. And if you're out there and you're watching your favorite wrestlers, if you see anything that's dropped that hints that, hey, maybe they're going to be making an appearance for the NWA, let me know, because I like to see that stuff. So there it is. Very excited, as you can tell, right? I've got a lot of enthusiasm and energy today because of this. I'm very hyped for this, and it's going to be cool. Going to be cool. Let's get out there and support the NWA. That's what we do. Woo! Now let's take a break, and when we come back, I will have an interview with Vinny Berry, author of Lance by Chance. So you stick around. Get prepared for St. Patrick's Day with Manscaped if you're going to get a little lucky. Manscaped is the global leader for below-the-waist grooming and the official sponsor of the Dave Dynasty Show. To ensure you have the best tools for your family jewels, visit manscaped.com and use the code DYNASTY20 for 20% off and free international shipping. You're in luck because Manscaped Performance Package is the ultimate in men's hygiene bundle. Included in this new package is the Weed Whacker Ear and Hair Nose Trimmer, which is waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. This is great stuff, guys. I use it regularly. I love mine. You can't go wrong. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code DYNASTY20 at manscaped.com. That is DYNASTY20 at manscaped.com. Also, every purchase at manscaped.com goes towards contributing to the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code DYNASTY20 at manscaped.com.
And our guest today is the author of Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich, Vinny Berry. Vinny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Ike. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is our pleasure to have you on the show, and we're very glad to have you, of course, and hear from you and get to talk about a lot of different things. But let's go ahead and get started. But first, Vinny, tell us about your background as a wrestling fan.
Well, I grew up in Lewisville, Texas, which is 30 miles from Dallas. And that is where the home of world-class championship wrestling is, where the Von Erichs were. And the Von Erichs actually grew up about 10 miles north of where I lived in Lewisville. So, you know, the Von Erichs were just like, you know, they were ours. You know what I mean? They were our hometown heroes. They were bigger than, you know, they were just bigger than anything out there. They were, you know, neck and neck with the Cowboys. They're, you know, they were huge.
Yeah, of course. And definitely during that time, the Von Erichs were, I would definitely say, the closest that there was to wrestling royalty at that time, for sure. And even
in
today,
Texas.
I would say, oh, of course.
Yeah, in Texas. Sure.
Absolutely. And actually, speaking of, and we actually talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but of course, having wrote a book about Lance Von Erich, what drew you in to want to write that book?
Well, I'll tell you, growing up in that area and watching, you know, everything unfold, you know, you got to remember at that time when David Von Erich passed away, I was 15 years old. So, I mean, I was really, you know, immersed in wrestling and watched it, and probably had started watching it in 82, I think. So, you know, David passed away. I was emotionally connected to it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when, you know, all this stuff was going on and happening, and they bring Lance in, and, you know, I mean, we all believed it. You know, there's people, oh, I knew he was never a Von Erich. I knew it all along. No, they didn't. they were drinking the Kool-Aid like everybody else was, and the Kool-Aid was good, man. And the wrestling show was phenomenal. The characters were phenomenal. Wrestling was phenomenal, and they introduced us to Lance, and we thought he was phenomenal too. And that was but then of course a year and a half later, Fritz comes on TV and says that he was never a Von Erich. And getting to your question is that I always wondered what happened to him, because he just disappeared. It was like he was here and he was gone. And then, you see him, if you go on the internet and you come across him on the internet, he's like the joke of wrestling, right? Lance Von Erich or Lance Non Erich or the fake Von Erich and all this stuff. Well, it makes it sound like he's an imposter. He wasn't an imposter. He was given a job. They put the name on him,
No, absolutely. And that's actually something that it was very interesting that, me and Dave talked about when we were talking about this episode and interviewing you, is that the whole Lance Von Erich, and, I'm a very big fan of the Von Erichs. I love their basically their story, their background. I hate that it's so tragic, but one of the honestly, in my opinion, a very key aspect of their story is also Lance Von Erich's story, because he was a very pivotal part of sort of that popularity rise, and eventually, of course, he kind of faded to the background. But that's sort of an unfortunate process of, like you said, people kind of calling him out and saying, "Hey, he's fake, he's fake, he's fake." Well, eventually, that's going to have an impact on his career. But that being said, when Lance decided to do the book with you, what was that process like? How did you guys research and formulate your method?
Well, I reached out to him originally to do an article for my website, Wrestleville.com. And when I reached out to him, now he was real receptive of talking to me, because I was talking to somebody for another story. They told me how to get in touch with him. I reached out to Lance, and before you know it, he's given me his phone number and said, "Hey, call me tomorrow." Wow. And so I called him the next day, and he was like, "Well, why do you want to do this?" And dude, it's I haven't talked about wrestling in 30 years, and where are you going to put it? And why do you want to do it? And who cares? And nobody cares. And I was like, I care. I care about this story, and I come from a news background, so I'm questioning everything, right? It's like, right. I used to joke with my wife, we'd go sit in a restaurant and I hear somebody talking about something, and she goes, "Are you eavesdropping?" I said, "Hey man, I get paid to be nosy, But I wanted to know this story. I wanted to know, and I told him. So we did the article, and I just felt that there was so much. I mean, I wasn't really pleased with the article, because I was trying to fit all this stuff in there, right? So I told him when we got done, he liked it. He says, "Wow, that's amazing." He goes, "Wow, that was really good." And I said, "Well, listen, if you're ever interested in writing a book with me, please, let's write a book, because I think you got a really good story." And he was like, "Write the book." So wow. we called each other, or I would call him, like, we'd pick a time on a Sunday afternoon. We talked for about an hour or two. Sometimes it'd be 30 minutes, but that went on for about a year and a year and a half, and not every Sunday. There was some, there's periods like 2 months or 3 months or a month that maybe we didn't talk, but, I was constantly working on it. And I think, I don't think I really started writing on it for about 9 months or a year, because I just didn't know what to do with it all. It was like all this, it was like walking in a junkyard, you see all this stuff, but you don't know what to do with it, right? It's like, right. It's all over the place. And it just took me a while to just kind of sift through all the notes and see what I had and kind of put everything together, and because he would talk about one thing, say in week 1, and elaborate it like on week 15, and I'd have to sort through all these notes, and man, it was really a lot of work. And so the book was actually written in, I think, January of 2020, where I was like, hey, I told my wife, I'm done with the book. Now we just got to edit it and clean it and move things around and extract and whatnot, So it was a long process. It probably took about, I think from the time, 3 years and 4 months from the time I started to the time I got it printed.
Wow. And I mean, I'm sure, like you said, there was just so much to unpack and unravel and everything else. And actually, if I'm going to step back just a little bit, and you even kind of mentioned this, but it's oftentimes, even, when we just do interviews with wrestlers, they're sometimes hesitant to do it because they're like, does anybody remember me? But I feel like Lance had a reasonable amount of success, because he was in world class. And of course, if listeners are curious about that, they can look into that, of course, and buy books about that too. But I want to touch on one small aspect, if you don't mind, because if some people may not remember, Lance teamed with a individual that was the Dingo Warrior, who would later become the Ultimate Warrior in WWE. What was Lance's memories about that?
Well, they got along very well. And, at that time when he started teaming with the Dingo Warrior, you got to remember what the landscape of the world-class territory was at that time. Lance was, I think Mike was still recovering. Kerry was in his motorcycle accident, and he wasn't, he's just being used a little different. He was still being called Lance Von Erich, but he wasn't, he wasn't really teaming with them as much like he was prior to that, and so he started, he did a run with him and Dingo Warrior. I think they had the world class tag team belts. I think they took them from Buzz Sawyer and Matt Bourne. And, he talks about those four, the four of them in the book, that he liked those matches. He thought that the four of them had good chemistry and they worked well together. And, the Warrior has a reputation of being stiff, but, they wrestled stiff in that area. That was a stiff area.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this, but, like you said, Lance was, let me rephrase this by saying that the Von Erichs were essentially royalty in Texas. Texas was their biggest success in a way. And I say in a way because of how they were almost seen as like these larger than life entities. And, and Lance is almost only remembered by his time in Texas, but some folks don't know that he had a lot of success around the world as well. So in addition to his success in the States, tell us a little bit about his international fame.
Well, after leaving World Class Championship Wrestling, he had the opportunity to go to South Africa. And again, you got to kind of understand maybe his state a little bit, he left World Class Championship Wrestling. He wasn't happy. He was going through a divorce. He'd been on the road for the last 2 years, and he was kind of, ready to kind of do something different, and so he traveled and he had an opportunity to go to South Africa, and he went and wrestled a little bit with Steve Simpson's father. Okay. And it explains how he meets Steve Simpson. Steve Simpson was a wrestler in world class, but Steve and Lance met in Portland when Lance was wrestling as Ricky Vaughn. And, when Lance went to Dallas, Steve wanted to come to Dallas because he knew people there. And Lance told David Manning about Steve, and and that was how the connection. They had a friendship, and he went over to South Africa and fell in, and just stayed. And so, working with Steve's dad, and then Steve's dad came over to America, and so he pretty much packed up his wrestling business over there. But Lance started a business, and through the rest, he started a gym business. He opened up gyms over there and became very successful with them. But through the wrestling that he did, he met Paul Lloyd Sr., and Paul Lloyd Sr., whose wrestling name over there was the Pink Panther. And he wrestled with him, and he also wrestled with Steve Ricard, another promoter from Australia, and so not only were they going all over South Africa and Sun City or Johannesburg and places, but with Steve Ricard, he was going to India and Singapore and Malaysia and different countries outside of the continent of Africa. And so, he did that for, he had his wrestling career was total about 10 years. So, and you got to remember something that, is a good looking dude. He has a body and very athletic, and he's really proud of the work that he did over in, overseas, because he wasn't under the pressure of wrestling as a Von Erich. He wasn't under the pressure of, wrestling next to Kevin and Kerry. A lot of people compare him to Kevin and Kerry, which is really unfair, because the guy never wanted to be a wrestler. It's not like they found, let's say Tommy Rich, who is a good wrestler, right? But, they just took it. It's not like they took an existing wrestler. They took a guy that couldn't wrestle at all, that just never had any interest in it or never did it.
Right.
And then they put the Von Erich name on, which is kind of unfair in a way, because people hold the Von Erich name in a high regard, and so to meet those expectations, it's like, I don't know, expecting me to go be able to wrestle with them, which, I just wouldn't be able to do, because that's not what I do.
Right. And honestly, that's, I feel like that was part of there was sort of a hubris in a way, because like you said, they kind of slapped the name on them and was like, okay, go be a Von Erich. And there is a certain expectation or, bar that's set when you hear the name Von Erich, because certainly the Von Erichs had an incredible history and they had a certain presence. So sort of like setting somebody up for failure from the get-go. And you kind of mentioned this too. He continued to have success even outside of the ring, and as you mentioned, in the international scope, he was doing very well as a wrestler. But even extending past that, when he eventually retired from in-ring and started his post-wrestling life, he had additional success through bodybuilding and, as you mentioned, health clubs, gyms, and those things. But tell us a little bit about Lance's post-wrestling life and his success after the ring.
Well, he and also too, while wrestling overseas, it wasn't like he was doing acting too, but It wasn't like a lot of that stuff was like he would wrestle and then he would act and he would wrestle and then it was like almost simultaneously, and that was one of the challenges of the book. But he was good friends with Anson Williams, who was Potsy from Happy Days. He met Potsy, who was making a movie in South Africa, and he was over there, and then when Lance went over to Florida for a time, because him and his South African wife were going to move to United States because her sister was over there. He ran into Potsy again, and there's actually a picture of him and Potsy in the book, which I thought was pretty cool, because Happy Days is a show that I grew up on, and Happy Days is a piece of Americana to me.
Right.
And to have Potsy in the book, I thought was cool. And this is what's really neat about Lance, the character, this whole thing. He's kind of like the Forrest Gump of wrestling, right? He wrestles with the Von Erichs. He goes to another country. He's on a tour and a train blows up. He smuggles auto parts and guns. He's an actor. He meets Potsy. He comes to America. He meets Eddie Mansfield, wrestles for Eddie Mansfield, is approached by Eric Bishop. It's just like it's just all this stuff that it's like, golly, dude. You kind of want to question some of it. You know what I mean? Because it's a little outlandish. But
it is.
But it's, my gosh, and that's why I tell people it's an amazing story. I was so glad to write it, and I'll tell you this. I just didn't write this book with Lance. I spent a lot of time talking to David Manning, who discovered him, who was Fritz's right-hand man. I spent a lot of time talking to Dusty Wolf and Jeff Bearden, the Youngbloods. Mark Youngblood was I still talk to him. I mean, we've chatted several times throughout this process. He's just amazing. And Johnny Mantell, Jerry Gray helped me. Even Kevin Von Erich helped me with he wrote a passage for the book, which isn't very flattering, but he also clarified some things that happened in one of the stories that's inside the book as well. And so there's a lot of people that, helped and contributed, and, I picked their brain. And so, you got to remember, this is a project that went over 3 years. It wasn't thrown together overnight. And a lot of thought went into this, and a lot of hard work went into this. And I'm really proud with how it came out. And hey, there's a lot of people that aren't going to read it because it's about Lance. But you know what? If you pick it up and you read it, you're gonna find out that there's more about Lance. And it covers
Absolutely.
the world-class promotion pretty well between 1982 and 1987.
No, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, when Dave kind of talked to me about doing this interview and we went over the questions together and everything else, some of the stuff that we talked about, and some of the things that you've told me too, it's sort of surprising that, that you don't know about, somebody who was pretty key in some of the early years of wrestling, especially somebody that had the name of Von Erich. And, it sounds like there are a lot of challenges that went into writing this book, but ultimately we have a book that it sounds pretty incredible. I haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, but, as soon as I can, I'm gonna. But I gotta ask, because of all the work that you've done on this one, and I mean, the just pure dedication, have you had any thoughts of doing more writing, more books in the future?
I have. I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't think my next book is going to be an autobiography. I think my next book is going to be a compilation of short stories. I've worked very closely with Kenny Casanova on this project. If it wasn't for Kenny, I'd probably still be at my computer writing this thing. You know, he was a good coach, a good mentor, a good cheerleader. You know, he really helped me because he's done it, right? And if you're not familiar, he wrote the book on Vader and Brutus Beefcake and Kamala and Danny Davis and Tito Santana, and he's got about 5 or 6 books under his belt, and he cranks them out. And so, with that said, you know, I have a compilation of short stories I think I want to put together, and so of course it'll be wrestling. I don't know when that is. I'm mapping it out and working on it, but yeah, I'm going to continue writing. Writing is a passion that, you know, I've had all my life, and of course I love wrestling most of my life, and you know, yes, this is my first book, but you know, prior to this, I wrote for boxing and MMA websites, and I probably cranked out 500 to 700 articles before I wrote this book. So I had a lot of writing, a lot of, you know, and look, man, writing, you know, some days you can write and you think, wow, I'm really proud of that. And then, you know, sometimes you write and you think, man, I'm not going to show that to anybody.
Right.
You know? So, you know, it's one of those things, but yeah, I'm definitely, man, there'll be something else. Just don't know what it is right now.
Hey, that's absolutely fine. As long as there's more, that's all that matters. As long as you continue that passion, that's what's important. But,
I will say this: the idea that I have for my next book with the compilation of short stories, it's going to be a lot different than this. You know, it will be about wrestling, but the concept is going to be totally different than an autobiography. So people coming in and think, oh man, you know, this guy wrote Lance's book, and you know, their expectations might be something, but it's, you know, I'm going to be proud of it when it's done, but it's going to be different, and I'll tell you that right now.
No, absolutely. And of course, we're excited to hear about that and when that comes out and when you start that process. But for the listeners out there, just to repeat this real quick, the book is called Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich by Vinny Berry. Now, Vinny, I want you to tell our listeners how they can get a copy of your book, because they're going to want to.
You can go to lancebychance.com, and we have autographed copies there. And also, too, you can get it on Amazon. If you have international listeners, the book now can be purchased in the United Kingdom, Japan, Canada, the Netherlands, you know, Italy, Spain, Germany. So, and also it's digital. It just went digital today, and you can basically get that anywhere. So, you know, you can, if you live in Mexico, you can get it. If you live in Australia, you can get it, and you can get it in the surrounding countries of, you know, in Middle East and stuff like that. So, I mean, we're on all platforms. You know, we're digital, we're overseas, and of course, overseas, you know, the printed copy you can't get everywhere. It's in those specific countries that I mentioned. But, you know, if you're here in the United States, you're golden, man, because you can definitely get it here, and you know, the shipping is reasonable.
Absolutely. And I guess last thing I have for you is, you know, some social media. If you have any social media that folks can follow you on and continue to follow you with your books and your journeys, or also any social media for this book specifically.
Yeah, for this social media for this book specifically is lancebychance.com. There, you know, you'll get a synopsis of the book, and then you can purchase it. There is a Facebook page, a Lance Von Erich Facebook group page. We put news and stuff in there. I have a website called Wrestleville.com where I post stories of independent wrestlers, veteran wrestlers, people in the wrestling business. And I have podcasts that are going to be, we'll probably have a section on there for podcasts in about, I don't know, within the month. So I've already got some interviews with Just Incredible, Maestro, Tokyo Monster Cahagas, Jackson Stone, Sal Renario, and got a lot of great names waiting in the wings to participate with that. And so, I've been writing for the last, seriously writing, for the last 10 years. I've been connected to wrestling for the last 5. And so I've met a lot of people, and wrestling people are good people. I've found a lot of people that are willing to help me promote the book, and a lot of people want exposure, and so there's a lot of people that, want to do stories, and so Wrestleville.com is a good place to read about, people in the business. And you can get me Vincent Berry on Facebook, or you can get me Vinny Berry on Twitter.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Before I close this off here, I want to first and foremost give a very special thank you to Vinny for coming on here and letting us pick his brain a little bit and talk about his book. So thank you very much, sir, for being a guest on the show, as always.
Well, I thank you for having me, and I really do appreciate you guys. I've listened to Dave, when he's had his guests on, and this is the first time that I've had the opportunity to talk to you, but I appreciate what you guys do, and I think for the wrestling fan, stuff like this is important, right? To support wrestling, especially after this last year. So, support the Dave Dynasty Show, support independent wrestling, and read lancebychance.com, or go to lancebychance.com and read Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich. You'll be glad you did.
100%. All right, everybody, go ahead and go and order a copy of the book for yourself, and go ahead and grab one as a gift for a wrestling fan in your life. We will be putting the link in the show notes. And, of course, again, Vinny, thanks for joining us. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Dave to wrap up this episode of the Dave Dynasty Show.
If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com. All right, and we're back to close this thing up. Thank you to Ike for conducting that interview. Thank you to Vinny Berry for coming on, talking about your book, talking about Lance Von Erich. Again, Lance by Chance. Go out and get yourself a copy. Buy one for a wrestling fan that you know. You can go to lancebychance.com for more information to order the book, or just go to Amazon, right? It's now available on Amazon. Go to Amazon, look up Lance by Chance. You'll find it. Order yourself a copy. Great. It's great, man. You got to get yourself one, right? And again, if you have a wrestling fan that you know, buy them one, man. Tell them that you're thinking of them. Support and share. That's what we do here. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, man. It's been another episode, another week. I'm so happy. I'm so glad. I'm pumped about this NWA news, and I've just got all this energy, and I'm gonna have to. I can't contain it, man. I'm so hyped. We've got a lot of great interviews coming up in the near future. Coming up next episode, we will more. It looks like we're gonna have another episode of Ring a Ding Dong Dandy, the Stampede Wrestling Podcast. More details online about that and who we will be talking to and about for that episode. Coming up in the future, we'll have interviews with Heath McCoy, who wrote the definitive book on Stampede Wrestling, Pain and Passion. That'll be a great interview. We're also going to have Johnny Candido on, talking about his brother, Chris Candido, and the book that him and John Cosper wrote. And then we're also going to talk to Tim Hornerbaker, noted author, especially on his latest book about Buddy Rogers. So you're going to want to hear all those, man. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you share us. Make sure you save everything and share anything that we put out there. Rate and review us. We appreciate all that. The word of mouth is how we do it, man. But if you want to throw a few bucks our way, go to paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty. Every little bit helps. It keeps this show free, keeps this show running. There are costs to host, and we appreciate your help. For somebody you'd like to see me talk to on the show, just hit me up, right? Send me a tweet, do whatever you got to do, and I'll see what I can do about it, right? Just tell me who it is, or if you want to make an appearance and you got a story to tell, let me know. I'm pretty excited. There's a lot of fun things happening in the world of wrestling, right? That's a great time to be a historian in professional wrestling. A great time, to be a fan of this stuff, man. I mean, more information coming out all the time, more footage coming out all the time. People out there doing a lot of great work, digging up articles and information. There's always great stuff being revealed and unveiled to us. It's great. It's great. It's great. So thank you for all you do to support the Dave Dynasty Show. I'm going to get out of here. And you know what? I'm going to go to Fight TV and watch some old episodes of NWA Power. That's how excited I am. But until next time, wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.